Hi everyone, welcome to my brand new YouTube channel. My name is Natalie and this is the 8th concession. This is our country property in Southern Ontario. This is my very first video, so of course it's going to be terrible, but I finally got the nerve up to do this. You might notice from some of the footage of the first few videos that it will look like summertime or springtime, whereas right now it's the beginning of the new year. It's the beginning of 2022, and it's obviously winter here in Ontario, and there's a reason for that, and there's a reason that I'm doing this now, and that's because I put it off and I put it off. And you might ask why. Fear of doing something new, fear of being judged, fear of failing at something. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's that life is short and time is marching on, whether or not we're in the middle of a lockdown or whether or not, things are going on in the world around us. And I don't want to get to that time when I'm taking my last breaths and regret not doing something that I kind of wanted to do. I'm often filled with self-doubt, and I think self-doubt can stop us from doing all kinds of things. I think everybody suffers from that. So I thought, forget it, just do it, and enjoy it. Part of the reason I wanted to do this at all is we bought this country property about 2.5 years ago, and for me and for my husband, it was the fulfillment of a dream to find our country property. And I know that's a dream of a lot of people. And I wanted to document it because we have a long journey to go to take this property that we bought and turn it into the house and acreage of our dreams. And I wanted to document that, even if nobody else watches it but me and my kids. Speaking of kids, I am a mother of 4. My husband and I have been married for 35 years this year, I think. And our kids are older, and our youngest daughter still lives with us. So I thought I would talk a little bit today just about how we got to the point we are now. Buying country property was not something I just thought of in the last few years. It is something I've wanted my whole life. I've always thought of myself as a country mouse. Now, as a lot of you know, country land is super expensive. And when we were first married and we were having our 4 kids, there wasn't a lot of money. We bought a nice house. We went through 3 different houses actually. And, with raising 4 kids, we just never seemed to have that money to make that leap, because there's a big gap. There's a gap between the house you can buy in a town or city and what you have to pay for country property. And even though the price or the value of your house in the city might go up, the value of country property goes up as well. So there's always that gap. And the problem for us was how to bridge that gap. How do we find that extra amount so that we could make that leap? Now, we do not have deep pockets. We're not born with silver spoons in our mouths. We've had to work hard. We've had to work hard all through our lives. And that's fine, but that also meant that finding enough money to make that leap was going to be a challenge. So when the kids started to get older and started to leave the house and find their own lives, which is wonderful, I said to my husband, whose name is Craig, I said, if we don't do this now, it'll be too late. We don't want to do this when we're too old to enjoy it. So we need to somehow make that leap now. And I thought that maybe I'd share with you how that happened. Maybe it will give hope to someone else who is also struggling to make that leap, to fulfill that dream. So I have to go back several years because this was not a quick thing. We started looking for country property in earnest, I'd say, about 7 years ago. and we had a real estate agent, the same real estate agent that we had bought our other houses with. So he knew us quite well and we knew him quite well. And he understood that this was going to be a long process because I was very specific about what we wanted in property and what we wanted in a house. And also that we did not have a lot of cash, that we were going to have to find something that was reasonably priced. So we began looking. He helped us look a bit, but of course, the journey to find our property took 4 years. And over that time, he was busy with other clients who were, paying him. So he was very good. If he saw anything of real interest, he would contact us. But a lot of the work I did. I looked online, on MLS online, and scouring real estate papers or whatever, trying to find anything that might suit. And when I say that, what we were looking for a large enough property that we would have some space. We're introverts, and that doesn't mean we're shy people. What it means is we like our solitude. We like, we get our energy from being alone. We're not social butterflies. We're not antisocial, but we like peace, quiet, and solitude. So we wanted a big enough property that we weren't just moving from the city where we were on top of people to the country where we were on top of people. So a large enough property for that, a large enough property that I could have a big garden. We wanted water if we could, pond or a stream would have been nice. And as for the house, we wanted something that wasn't brand new, because brand new meant expensive. And we didn't want something that had been recently renovated, because while that was lovely, to move into a house where you don't have to do anything is lovely, except if you don't like exactly how they have done it. If you don't like the colors they've chosen or the layout of the kitchen. And I didn't want to have to pay for someone else's dream kitchen. So we wanted either no house, where we would start from scratch, or we wanted an older house that we could then renovate to our taste, and we weren't paying for someone else's granite countertops that we would just rip out again. So that was hard enough to look for that, but we had another challenge. We always thought, even with the 4 kids, as they grew up and, started to move out of the house, we'd be empty nesters, we'd be on our own. And of course, life throws some curveballs, and for us, that curveball, or one of the curveballs, is our youngest daughter, who's lovely. She's also special needs. So when we were looking for property and trying to find reasonably priced property, of course, any country property that's near a city, or the closer it is to a city, the more expensive it is. But the problem in southern Ontario, and probably in lots of other parts of the country or even the continent, is that once you move away from one city, you're actually getting closer to another city. So that, it depends on the distance between the towns or the cities to even find any land that's far enough out that you can get it for a good price. The solution to that, of course, is to move where land prices are cheaper. And here in Ontario, that means moving north. And yes, land up there is much more reasonable. But the problem became, with our special needs daughter, that she needed to be close to medical care. It was also important that she stay close to her sort of social circle. It's not easy for her to make friends. And the few people we found that were good for her and good for us, it's a small group. She also has therapies here. She also had volunteer opportunities. Pre-pandemic, of course, but there were places where she would volunteer to work, and it kept her busy and active and having a purpose in life. And we realized that while we wouldn't have minded moving to some remote area of northern Ontario and living on a mountaintop somewhere, that would be ideal for us, it would not be ideal for her. So now we had to focus our search on a certain distance from the town where we lived so she could maintain those ties. Well, of course, that tied our hands financially because the land around town was expensive. At that point, it would have been easy to give up. And it might have flit across my mind for a moment, but I'm nothing if not stubborn. And you can ask my husband about that. And I just wasn't ready to give up on that dream. So how did we do it? Farmland in this part of the country is the most expensive. In Ontario, farmland is almost double the other most expensive places in Canada. It is also almost the most expensive out of all of the United States, except I think for 2 states. It's extremely expensive. So the possibility of buying farmland of any kind pretty much went out the window. That was kind of okay with us. My husband and I are closer to retirement than not, shall we say. And so the idea of starting a career as a farmer was not something we were really looking at. Farmers are some of the hardest working people that I know, and I know how much effort and time it takes to run a farm. So a big farm operation was not really something we were looking for anyway. So that's fine. Farmland was out. But what did that leave us with? Well, it left us with marginal land. And if you're unfamiliar with the term marginal land is simply land that is not suitable for agriculture. It's not suitable for crops. It's not suitable for livestock. What does that look like? Well, land can be marginal for any number of reasons. Quite often it's the soil. It might be too rocky. It might be too wet. It might be too dry. There might not be enough of it. That might be, bedrock is close to the surface and there's hardly any topsoil. It could be that the land is too steep or sloped and there's no way you could farm it. It could be that the access to the property is too remote, or there is no access. It's in a valley somewhere and there's no road in, or no good road. So land can be marginal for a number of reasons. But because it's not good for agriculture, its value is less. And so that's what we had to start looking for. Marginal land with no house, or an old house that hasn't been renovated, with hopefully a bit of water on the property and enough land that we had our sort of buffer zone. That's a long, hard list. But we were determined, and we scoured everywhere, and we went to see many places. And there was always something wrong. We knew we'd have to compromise. We knew we'd have to compromise on something. It might be the location, it might be the neighbors, nothing was going to be perfect. We looked and did showings, and it was just a long, long process. And then finally, after about 3 years of searching, I found a house that would suit. It was 4 acres, so it wasn't as big as I wanted. But again, we knew there would have to be compromises, but it was on a quiet country road. It had a bungalow. And we were also looking for a bungalow, not a 2-story, because again, we'd like to age in place. And we knew that, stairs might become an issue as we got older. So we would prefer a bungalow, but a bungalow with space so that we could create a living area just for our daughter, our special needs daughter, so she could have her own living area. This one had a walkout basement. She would have had a small apartment, suite, whatever you want to call it, but it was totally doable. The house was in a bit of rough shape. They had ripped the furnace out for whatever reason, but it was livable, but definitely it needed work and hadn't been updated. Had a garage, had a pond, and the price was right. Now, at that time here in Ontario, I don't know if it was happening in other places too, but the real estate market was stupid. It had this stupid thing going on where instead of the normal process of where if you saw a property that you liked, that you would go see it, and then you would put in an offer, and the people would look at the offer, and then they'd either accept it or sign it back, and then you'd negotiate or whatever. But that's not what was going on here at that time. What was going on was real estate agents would list the property low, and then they would say, we're going to show it for a week, and then on Saturday, we're going to take all the offers that have been presented, open them all with our client, and pick the one we want, the best one. So it was like blind bidding. You had no idea what other people were offering. You had no idea what the vendor would even accept. It was crazy. So because this house would suit our purposes, because it was in a price range that looked like we could afford, we did our best. We put in an offer. We put in an offer $80,000 over the asking price. We were so nervous. And then we got a call from our real estate agent we did not get the house. The winning bid was $105,000 over asking. I mean, it was madness. We were second highest. I wonder to this day if those people regret the extra $25,000 they actually had to spend to get the house. But this is what was happening. You had no idea what other people were bidding. You had no idea how high to go. And of course, that's great for the seller, but it's not great for the buyer. We didn't get the house. I was heartbroken because this was the closest we had come to a house that would fit most of our needs and that would allow us to create a space for our daughter. And I was bitter about it. I couldn't even drive past that house for the longest time because I couldn't believe that we had missed on the house that seemed to be so perfect for us. We did keep looking. Nothing was suitable. And I checked the listings for anything. Our listings all began with a half acre to 1.99 acres, and then 2 to 5 acres, and then 5 to 10 acres, and 10 and above. So I discounted anything that was in the 0.5 to 1.99 acres, under 2 acres, I should say, as it was just too small for us. And in July, our real estate agent said to us, well, what about this house? And he showed a listing I had flipped by, and I don't know what the agent had done, but they had tried to enhance the picture so that this house, which I assumed had red brick, was actually orange. It look at an orange brick and there's like vibrant green trees. I'm like, yeah, that's been photoshopped somehow. So I said, the orange house says it's under 2 acres. And he said, well, that's what it says in the listing details. But if you read the description, it's actually 25 acres. I'm like, I don't understand that at all, but that is exactly what it said. So he said, well, we might as well go see it, but I certainly don't want an orange house. So we know our way around Southern Ontario quite well, my husband and I. And we had been already 3 years into looking for a property, 3.5 years. We'd been down every road. But we got lost coming to this particular showing because the roads weren't through roads. They stopped, they were dead ends, and then you had to go back around, and it was crazy. You had an hour for a showing, and we were half an hour late. We had phoned our real estate agent. He was trying to direct us because he knew the area, and we had already wasted half of the showing. And worse than that, the people who were selling the house, or the woman who was selling the house, she was a widow. And she didn't drive. And so she was in the house. Now, is there anything more awkward than looking at a house when the owner is sitting there in the living room? It was so uncomfortable. We were late. We were flustered. And when we met David outside, he said, well, you're not going to like this property anyway, I don't think. I don't think it's what you're looking for. I've looked around the outside, but we went in anyway. But, you know, she was sitting there, and you can't really talk openly when the person's sitting there. You can't say, oh, I'm just going to knock this wall down, or we could just, oh my gosh, this color is just disgusting. We can repaint it, or we can just change all this, because they're sitting there, and you have to be respectful of the fact that this is their home and they probably like it that way. So we couldn't really talk about what we wanted and whether or not it would work. And we did the showing, and we thanked her, and we left, and we continued looking. And about 3 months later, my husband and I were away overnight just to take a break from everything. And as I was mulling over the problem of, I was getting almost desperate. Like, what are we going to do about this? Why can we not find anything? It was coming up on like 3.5, almost 4 years of looking. And I said, remember that orange house? Why didn't we want that again? It had a pond. It had 25 acres. And it was a bungalow. It was a raised bungalow. So there were a few steps up, 3 steps up to the bedrooms. But we could handle that. It had room downstairs to convert into a space for our daughter and still have basement for ourselves. Why didn't we want that again? So we talked it over, and I thought, are we crazy? So by then, the market had cooled down a bit and had gone back a little more to the normal way of offering on a property. And we called our real estate agent. We said, we think we want to actually offer on that property. He said, really? We're like, yeah, we think it's got what we need. So we put in an offer. It was rejected, but the selling real estate agent said, this is the price this woman will accept, no less. And we thought about it, and we said, okay. And so we bought it, and we this was in November. This was months after we had looked at the property. And I think in retrospect that was a good thing, because I think it had sat on the market long enough that she was willing to accept an offer, because we had offered lower than the asking price. And I think she was a little more flexible because she was anxious to move on. She was moving into a condo closer to one of her grown children. The house and the property was too much for just her to look after anymore. And so it took a while. We didn't close until the following spring, the spring of 2019. We bought this property on the 8th concession, 25 acres. It's 24 acres, 25 acres, 25 acres, and a side split ranch that needs some updating, needs some work in every single room. But it's totally livable for the time being. The grounds had been let go a little bit, but there was scope for all kinds of things. And we moved in. This is a picture of my husband and me the day we moved into the property. So 3.5 years ago. So this spring, actually, it will be 4 years. I wanted to start documenting this journey earlier on, but I didn't. Now, to be fair, the first while that we were here, a lot of the renovations and updating we did were the non-sexy grunt things. We had to first deal with the electricity in the house. The wiring was severely out of date. It was aluminum, which our insurer really loved. So we also had the panel was old. We only had 100 amps. The wires were above ground and sagging. So that first half a year, because it took a long time to find an electrician and get the hydro all fixed. The hydro company had to come out. It was a huge deal to change the panel and move the meter and rewire part of the house. We didn't rewire the whole house at that time, but we rewired part of it. And we buried the wire from the pole outside, and we put in a generator because we knew that power in the country goes out, and with freezers and fridges and an electric stove and such, we would need our electricity. So that was a huge project that we had to do right off. So that wasn't really that exciting, although I will show the marvelous and expensive generator. Of course, getting the generator meant we had to get a huge propane tank too, because you have to have a huge tank, because we got a whole home generator that's wired in. So that was just all expensive and a lot of work. And then the other 2 years that we've been here, we have actually been creating the living space for our daughter downstairs. It's a walkout, so she has her own access. But out of respect for her privacy, we're not going to show that part of the house. We're not going to show that renovation. Outside, I started expanding the gardens, and we bought chickens, and we did some work out there, but there's still a lot to do. So that kind of catches you up to where we are now. It's 2022, and it's time to start renovating our part of the house and turning this property inside and out into our dream. And I hope you come along with this. Although I'm happy to do this even if no one's watching. I'm happy to document this for ourselves, but it would be fun to share this with other people. It might inspire other people to not give up on that dream, to not let go, even though it seems almost impossible. I firmly believe there's always a way. And I also think that what's meant for you won't pass you by. Keep working at it. Find a creative way around the particular challenges you might be faced as you search for your dream property. And I hope you have fun coming along with us as we transform this into what we've dreamed of all our lives. Bye for now.